It starts with a confession, not from Lewis Hamilton, but from the man steering Ferrari's ship into the future. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, sits down and admits the thing no one in Maranello likes to admit. They may have underestimated just how hard it would be for Hamilton to adapt. However, better days are coming as they have some good news for Hamilton, finally. I think perhaps that we underestimate the challenge for Lewis at the beginning of the season, Vasseur says plainly. And you can almost hear the weight in his voice. After 2 decades in the Mercedes family, first at McLaren, then 12 long years at the works team, Hamilton walked into Ferrari with all the history, all the passion, and all the pressure of the prancing horse. New car, new engineers, new software, a whole new racing culture. Every single thing was different. But Vasseur isn't calling it a mistake, because over the last 4 or 5 races, he's seen something. The pace is coming back. The fire is there. And in 2026, when the sport's new era begins, Ferrari expects Hamilton to be in the title fight. Still, Hungary hurt. Qualifying out in Q2 while Charles Leclerc started from pole was a gut punch. Hamilton didn't sugarcoat it. He called himself useless and even suggested Ferrari might want to think about a new driver. Those are not the words you expect from a man who's won 7 world titles. When you have a feeling, you have a feeling, Hamilton explained. There's a lot going on in the background that is not great. But just as quickly, he regrouped. In the Ferrari debrief, he was already talking about resetting. I'm not where I want to be yet, but the fight's not over. Don't count me out. And that's exactly how Vasseur sees it. He doesn't think Hungary was a disaster at all. To him, it was the reality of modern F1. The grid is so tight that 1/10 of a second can send you from Q3 contender to Q2 elimination. He even points out that in Q1, Hamilton was ahead of Leclerc, and in Q2, the gap between them was tiny. He's demanding, Vasseur says. But that's also why he's a 7-time world champion. First of all, he's very demanding with himself. I think it was always good motivation for him and the main reason of performance. Demanding is one way to put it. Perfectionist is another. Hungary wasn't the only flashpoint. Spa had its own drama. Hamilton was knocked out in Q1 for a track limits breach, but his lap was just 0.029 seconds off Leclerc's. In the sprint qualifying, he was matching Leclerc to the 1,000th of a second until a brake issue caught him out. On paper, it looked like disaster. In reality, it was razor-thin margins. Vasseur knows the numbers. Since Miami, Hamilton's qualifying pace has often been right there with Leclerc's, sometimes even ahead. In Canada, Spain, Austria, and Silverstone, the gap was almost nothing. You have to avoid drawing a conclusion too quickly, Vasseur warns. And this is the part of the story that makes 2026 so tantalizing. Because while McLaren dominates 2025, Ferrari's fight is not about this year's title. It's about momentum. It's about making sure that when the new regulations arrive, they have a driver who can destroy the competition from the very first lap. Charles Leclerc has already made it clear. Second in the constructors is the immediate goal. The wind tunnel hours for 2026? That's a problem for later. When we are on track, we just want to finish as high up as possible, Leclerc says. The biggest target is to come back to winning races as soon as possible. That's the shared mission. For Leclerc, for Vasseur, for Hamilton. And it's why Ferrari isn't panicking about Hamilton's mid-season slump. They're protecting him. They're backing him. Because they know the fight he has in him isn't going anywhere. But here's the twist. In 2026, there will be no excuses. No just adapting story. No room for fractions of a second in the wrong direction. The slate will be wiped clean, and the expectation will be brutal. Win, or be forgotten. And Ferrari, for all its history of heartbreak, is betting that Lewis Hamilton is the man who can turn that expectation into reality. Ferrari isn't just defending Lewis Hamilton in press conferences, they're building a fortress around him. Every word from Fred Vasseur feels deliberate, a way of shielding Hamilton from the noise while sending a message to the rest of the paddock. Don't mistake struggle for weakness. It's why Vasseur pushes back so hard against the useless narrative from Hungary. "I don't need to motivate him," he says firmly. He is frustrated, but not demotivated. It's a completely different story. That's the key. Frustration is fuel. And Hamilton has spent his whole career turning frustration into speed. Inside Ferrari, there's no whispering about replacements, no murmurs of regret over his signing. Quite the opposite. They know the move from Mercedes to Maranello was like trading in your home for a castle with a completely different set of rules, rituals, and rhythms. The learning curve was always going to be steep. But here's what's different now. Ferrari is treating 2025 as a battlefield for experience, not glory. McLaren may have the strongest car this year, but the red team is locking in its strategy for 2026, the year the rulebook changes and the playing field resets. And when that moment comes, they want Hamilton in a position to crush. Charles Leclerc's stance says it all. Yes, more wind tunnel time could help them in 2026, but not if it comes at the cost of losing second in the constructors this year. Second place is one of our targets, Leclerc says. But the biggest target is to come back to winning races as soon as possible. In other words, Ferrari's not going to limp into the future, hoping for scraps of regulation advantage. They want to be sharp, ruthless, and race-ready when the lights go out in 2026. And Hamilton? He's on board. The Hungarian Grand Prix might have been a public low point, but the reset he talked about during the summer break wasn't just PR fluff. People close to the team say he's spending more time in the simulator, more hours debriefing with engineers, and more energy understanding the Ferrari's DNA. That's how champions think. Not about where they are now, but where they're going to be when it counts. Of course, 2026 isn't going to be a quiet year for anyone. With the new power unit regulations, aero tweaks, and sustainability pushes, every team is essentially starting from zero. That means the mental game will be as important as the mechanical one. And who better to handle that pressure than a man who's fought through title, deciders, political wars, and the brutal mind games of Formula One for nearly 2 decades? This is why Vasseur's comments matter so much. They're not just protecting Hamilton's pride, they're telling the grid that Ferrari's gamble is long-term. When the switch flips in 2026, they believe Hamilton will be not just fast, but unstoppable. Still, the road there will be lined with critics. Every qualifying misstep, every race stuck in a DRS train, every margin to Leclerc will be analysed and exaggerated. The thing about Ferrari is, they know the world is watching. They've lived through decades of hype and heartbreak. But if Hamilton can turn that constant spotlight into momentum, if he can walk into the first race of 2026 with the car under him and the fire in him, the competition could be staring down the start of a nightmare. Because the truth is, Ferrari's backing of Hamilton isn't sentimental. It's strategic. They know that in the chaos of a new F1 era, experience counts double. And Hamilton doesn't just have experience, he has scars, instincts, and the unshakable belief that he can still win at the very top. When the regulations flip, when the first lap of 2026 begins, Ferrari wants the other teams to look in their mirrors and see a red car closing in with the number 44 on it, and to know there's no escape. The only question is, will they still be defending him then, or will they be too busy celebrating him?